The ovaries are talking, and trust us, you'll want to hear what they have to say. Science, tech, hormones, and a whole lot of honesty. This is Talking Ovaries. Hi, welcome to Talking Ovaries. This week we're talking about, is it me or is it perimenopause and menopause? And joining those dots. Our goal for this week is to help women recognize what they're going through might be perimenopause or menopause and connect the dots between all of those different symptoms that you may be experiencing. So, have you started to experience insomnia, night sweats, hot flashes, changes to your periods, fatigue, and you're wondering, is this stress or is it just aging? You're not crazy, you're not alone, and this well could be perimenopause.
But the tricky part is that there's so many conditions that have the same symptoms. So that's why it's very important that we check and we are together in this journey with your health provider. Mm-hmm. What have you experienced, Judith, as far as your journey with perimenopause and menopause? I mean, these are wild times.
They certainly are. And we talked a lot about how is it that you would relate perhaps dry eyes and a dry mouth and insomnia and period changes and maybe achy joints together.
I never would have.
No. And you would, why would you think that any of these things are related in any way? And I think for me, that was a real problem in terms of I did not join the dots. And the reason why we get these changes in various parts of our bodies is because we have estrogen receptors and progesterone receptors in lots of parts of our bodies, from our brain to our eyes to our mouth, to our throats, because we may get dry throat, to our tummies, our gut, to our ovaries, our feet. So it affects everything.
I was actually shocked when I saw like a diagram. I'm going to try to find one, but apparently there's estrogen receptors everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's not surprising that we don't join the dots. And one of the biggest problems is that we just don't talk about it.
Yes.
We do think that it's stress or that it's aging. And I did exactly that. How did I join the dots? Well, I didn't, as I said. I was 51. I was well into my perimenopause. I'd had symptoms for around 8 years. Some of them were really severe. One, I had very heavy but regular periods. So I had iron deficiency anemia. And of course, as Tanya mentioned, this can cause other problems too. So I just didn't think that it could be anything to do with my hormones. I had a lot of problems with insomnia and sleep. I had really big problems with anxiety, worry, not being able to remember things, brain fog. The mental health side of things were really severe for me. At times, things got pretty dark, actually, because I felt so bad. I also had frozen shoulder at one point and spent the day calling myself a loser because I couldn't understand what I'd done.
I never knew that was the thing. Now, I know now a lot of my friends have had it. I didn't exactly have frozen shoulder, but I had friends who suffered from it for years. They was like, it'll just pass. Like, that's crazy.
And why would you link it? Why would you think that your ovaries and estrogen would have anything to do with that? I had plantar fasciitis. I love walking and found that I just didn't have, first of all, the capacity to do that, but also my joints would ache. And I just wasn't feeling any joy around it. It was a lot that I didn't feel very much joy around. I didn't have really a lot of hot flashes, but I did have night sweats. And then also I had a fear of driving. I lost my confidence in driving.
That's interesting.
And so why would I have linked all of these things to have anything to do with my hormones? It was a chance conversation with my pharmacist where I went on Saturday morning to get my iron supplements, and she just happened to ask me how I was doing. And I started to cry because I hadn't slept very well. I wasn't feeling great at work. And she said, "What is it?" And I said, "I don't know." And I listed off all of the things that I was feeling. And she looked over at her computer and she said, well, you're 51 years old.
Check,
You might
check,
be
check.
perimenopausal. Yeah, you might be. And she could have slapped me around the face because
Yeah.
I would have never have thought that. And I want to share with all of you that my background, I'm a registered nurse many hundreds of years ago, but
Well, maybe
I
not
also,
hundreds of years ago.
it feels like it. And I also worked in the pharmaceutical industry, so I don't now, but I do know things about medical history, but
Yeah.
I had not linked it together and I had not joined the dots.
Nobody talked to us about menopause, like
Mm-mm.
really. Like
No.
I think we are the first generation actually talking about it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, and I think as well, there is a certain stigma around it.
Yeah.
I have lots of friends who I talk to about my journey, and a lot of them are very receptive to it. Some just do not want to hear it.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
don't want to hear anything about aging and
Yeah.
what that could mean for them.
That I'm finding really surprising even in this day. So last Canada Day, we had a booth because we have an app, Bastet Rising, to help women navigate menopause. So we had a booth at the Canada Day fair. We're passing around pamphlets, talking to people, and I was surprised at the number of women who would go by the booth and not want to talk. But
Mhm.
then when their families were distracted, they would come back running to the booth and say, "Can I have one of those?" And they would hide it in their jacket. It really shocked me. I wasn't expecting that at all, that they would feel that stigma either because they don't want to admit it or because, again, we're seen as getting older. Really shocked me.
It's something that shocks me. I also am involved with Menopause Canada. I'm the creator of Menopause Canada. And I want to talk about perimenopause and menopause all the time. And some of my friends and my co-workers are receptive to this, and others are not. And I can see very clearly that what they're struggling with, what they talk about, is perimenopause. And it isn't just a matter of, oh, well, you need to get yourself on hormones, although they can be incredibly beneficial and they were for me. But I think it's that you need to start to look at other areas of your life too and addressing some of those, which I wish I had. I,
Yeah.
I wish I'd have looked at some of the other lifestyle changes that I could have made a lot earlier. And I think it would have saved me a lot of emotional wear and tear
Yeah.
because those years in perimenopause really took their toll on me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I think there are lots of relationships that fail too. There's lots of women who give up work if they feel that they can.
And the
And
statistics are crazy. I think from the Menopause Foundation has a statistic that 1 in 4 women either consider or actually leave the workforce. I mean, that's pretty big.
then the other side of it all is that many women are undergoing tests for various conditions that they're complaining about in their midlife and in their late 40s, early
Yeah.
50s that really have nothing
You
to
don't need
do
to
with
do it. And
anything else.
that was part of my journey, the circling in and out of doctor's visits for no reason, really, at the end of the
Yeah,
day. So
yeah. So tell us about that, Tanya. How did that work out for you?
my journey was a little bit different. And like you, I didn't really connect the dots at the beginning. It happened at a time of a lot of stress in my life. I
Mm,
was in the middle of trying to salvage a company, a startup that I was dealing with, and the interesting space of cryptocurrency and blockchain technology. So it was very stressful. I was working 16-hour days. I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't eating well. I wasn't exercising. I was gaining weight. I was very irritable, all of which I thought was just stress of what I was going through. I was angry at the situation. I felt terrible because we were talking about shutting down the company, which meant the people that were working for us, we had a small team of developers, they would have to be let go. And this was during the pandemic. I was very, very fortunate that we were able to employ people throughout the pandemic. And now the thought of letting them go was something that I was having a real hard time reconciling. So I thought it was stress. In hindsight, now when I look back at it, I realized I was really having trouble making decisions where I've never had problem with that in the past. I was angry. I was actually having issues with anger, which I'm a very happy person. I'm half Newfie, so I'm a happy person, right? And I started to realize that there's something else going on. I just decided I needed a change. So we did shut down the company. And as I was trying to figure out, okay, what am I going to do with my life? My skill set, a woman with both hardware and software experience, a lot of tech experience, I should be able to find a place but where these skill sets would be valuable. So I started researching. As all that's going on, I've got all of a sudden my nausea spikes up. So I go see my doctor and nope, it's nothing. They can't find anything. My joint pain, I really started experiencing, I was having joint pain all along, but now it was debilitating. I go back to the doctor, what's going on? Ultrasounds, no, you just need more rest, whatever. Couldn't find anything. And as I'm researching, I'm being pointed into women's health as an area for us for where my skill set would be valuable. And as I start reading about menopause, and actually I went to Dr. Newson's website in the UK because she had a long list of all the symptoms of menopause. And I'm reading this list and I'm going, oh my God, I tick so many of those boxes. And I'm like, this is menopause. So I started reading. I did a whole bunch of research and I literally started tracking my symptoms. I said, do I really have this? How long I've been dealing with this? And I just went back to my doctor and I said, I think this is menopause. Actually, before that, I did talk to my mom, which we don't really do because I've never had hot flashes or night sweats. Called my mom and I'm like, Mom, did you have hot flashes when you went through menopause? And she's like, no. She goes, sometimes I would get rosy cheeks. I'm like, yeah, I get rosy cheeks too sometimes, but I thought it was I was eating something weird, right? So those were the extent of the hot flashes. And I'm like, oh, I'm not going to tell my friend Wendy, who suffered with hot flashes for 10 years, like break into a sweat. I'm going to go, yeah, Wendy, I had hot flashes. See, look, I'm hot flashing right now. So I said, I'm not going to do that. But then I went to my doctor. And of course, I had the wonky periods and all that stuff. And my doctor's like, well, you don't have hot flashes. And we only give HRT for hot flashes. I'm like, I want HRT. I'm ready. And luckily, my doctor knows me. And she said, okay, let's try it. And it was 2 weeks on HRT. I was back to myself. And I was so amazed at how quickly my joint pain just dissipated. And that nausea that I was feeling just dissipated. And that made me mad. And that's why, to be honest, then as opposed to looking for a job, I decided to create Aranex. Because my rage comes from how do we not understand women's hormones? I mean, we give birth to the whole world. How do we not understand how female body works and the role of hormones in it? I really believe that we need to find a way to continuously monitor hormones, and that's our main purpose. But at the same time, the importance of tracking, and that's why we created Bastet Rising to help women to track their symptoms and see the list, right? We have a list of 140 because, again, you don't connect the dots. Until somebody tells you, you don't connect the dots.
No, you're right. Isn't it funny that the pandemic, I think, caused a lot of problems for people, but yet for you and I think it created an environment where we were able to take stock and try and connect those dots. And I too went on to Louise Newson's
did you?
website
Is that how you discovered what you were faced with? How did you eventually connect the dots?
After that visit with my pharmacist, I came home and I did what everybody does. And I went on to Dr. Google and was able to find a clinic not far from me that would provide me with fantastic care at an absolutely extraordinary cost. And that made me even more desperate at the time. And I think that's one of the things I felt was really important for women to understand was that you don't have to go down that expensive route. You can go to your local GP or your healthcare provider. But I made an appointment to see my GP as my pharmacist had suggested. But in the meantime, I also found the Balance app, which was Dr. Louise Newson from the UK's app. I was more attracted to that one because it was UK based and not US based, because I wanted to make sure my data was being held outside of the US. I started to track my symptoms. And it was eye-opening. I had symptoms that I was aware of very clearly, but the one that came up for me that I just hadn't recognized was my dry eyes. I had terrible dry eyes, and I thought it was just because I look at a computer all day. But
Mm-hmm.
in actual fact, that wasn't the case. The insomnia was much worse than I thought. The anxiety was much worse than I thought. But being able to see that list of symptoms helped me to really validate what it was that I was feeling, and that I didn't have dementia, and that I wasn't going mad, and this
Yeah.
wasn't necessarily the end of the world. And that, in fact, there was a small section on the app with some testimony of other women. And I didn't then feel quite so alone. So, tracking my symptoms really, really helped me. One of the great things about your app and also about the Balance app is that you can create a report after you've tracked your symptoms for a while, and you can take that to your healthcare provider. So if you are like me when I was 51 and I couldn't think straight most of the time,
Yeah.
I was able to take that report with me and show it to my GP, who happens to be really good anyway. And he could then very clearly see what my symptoms were. And we were able to treat them accordingly. And like you, I know it doesn't work for everyone. I started on menopausal hormone therapy, and it didn't change things overnight. It took a little while to settle things
It
down.
wasn't
But
magical
it's
like it was for me. For me, it was
no,
magical.
no, it wasn't the magic pill,
Yeah.
but it certainly did improve some of my key symptoms, my heavy periods, my insomnia. I did get some side effects from it, but I do from everything. Those did settle down, but it took some time. For me, it was the tracking of the symptoms that really helped me
Yeah.
to understand what was going on in my body.
Even if like using an app or piece of paper or whatever it is, by tracking and understanding and seeing the trend is how you actually are able then to strongly advocate for yourself
Mhm.
if your doctor happens to dismiss you for whatever reason. You have this extra information that these are symptoms of menopause. Your doctor may not be aware, to be honest, what some of
Mhm.
the symptoms are. One weird symptom I had that took a long while to go away was dry mouth. I would wake up in the morning and it's like my mouth hadn't made any saliva all night. It was terrible. And
Mhm.
I even mentioned it to my dentist because I happened to go for a dental cleaning. My purpose for telling the dentist is that if you see other patients with dry mouth and they're my age, mention to them that it could be menopause and to go talk to their doctor. And instead they're like, oh, there's a mouthwash you can use for that. And I'm like, no, that's a band-aid. That doesn't target the solution. But by tracking it and knowing it, then you can actually advocate. And I think that's really, unfortunately, in the short term, is what we're going to have to do until education catches up, is that we're going to have to really advocate for ourselves.
For sure. And I think having that tracking available to me, and using an app as I did, allowed me to work on accepting what was going on for me.
That too. Yeah.
Because I talked about it earlier on about, as women, there is a stigma around aging, and seeing this stage of my life as being a form of transition and moving towards accepting some of the symptoms that I was having that weren't, as I said, dementia or me just going mad or me not coping. There really was a fundamental reason for that, which then allowed me to join the dots. The penny dropped, whatever phrase it is that you want to use, really helped me to start to move things forward. And it's taken some time. I'm 58 now. This is 7 years ago. But there's lots of things that have changed since then that I have been able to, one step at a time, deal with. This isn't something that can happen and switch overnight.
Yeah.
This is something that you have to work on. During that time, obviously, I've become menopausal. I still track my symptoms to a certain extent, particularly if I'm having an off time right now, just to make sure that maybe it isn't anything else. I know we talked about that at the beginning. The symptoms could be seen as being perimenopause or menopause, but it also can be other things too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I have hypothyroid. So I've been taking thyroid medication my whole life. And funny enough, thyroid deficiency can cause weight gain, joint pain, and menstrual changes. Before I actually went on HRT, My doctor monitors my thyroid anyway. Like, she did check. It wasn't my thyroid that was causing other problems. There's other forms of deficiency that have similar symptoms to estrogen deficiency, which is essentially what menopause is. For example, iron deficiency, vitamin D deficiency, and thyroid deficiency, they all cause fatigue, muscle weakness and aches, insomnia, and sleep problems. So before you try estrogen or HRT, have your doctor check your iron. I think the Canadian population, 80% of us are vitamin D deficient anyway. So try first your vitamins, your iron, have your doctor check things to make sure that there isn't something else causing at least some of the symptoms. But period changes are pretty standard for estrogen deficiency and thyroid deficiency. But we know the one thing that is only estrogen deficiency is the hot flashes and night sweats, right? So if you are having these debilitating hot flashes, chances are that you're starting to be perimenopausal. I can't stress enough the importance of tracking your symptoms before you get to 50s, right? Because you have to establish your baseline. That's how you're going to actually understand that something is changing. It really resonates with me, Judith, how you said that, I wish I had known. If you start tracking your symptoms at 45, for example, you start to feel that something is off, start tracking, because then you can establish your baseline. And as things change, then you can definitely go with data to your doctor, who now are more empowered, and you can find more providers who will help you long before you get into like the very debilitating areas of perimenopause and menopause.
You're absolutely right, Tanya. And I mean, the data actually shows that many women will start to have symptoms of perimenopause or hormonal changes before anything happens to their periods.
Yeah.
Their periods are almost the last sort of third of the period of time
Yeah.
that you're going to find some changes. You start to have increased incidence of migraine. You will start
Yes.
to have those achy joints,
Yeah.
skin changes, hair
Yeah.
changes.
Yes.
So I think, if you're one of those women who tracks your periods anyway, there is no harm in tracking all of your other symptoms and giving yourself the time to do that.
Yeah. And I think as women, I think we do track our periods pretty well. You know when your period is coming, right? You have your own symptoms. So for me, I used to get the hormonal headache right before my period would come. I would get very tired and I would get this hormonal headache. And I didn't pick up on this, but I stopped having these headaches, these hormonal headaches. And if I had been tracking, I think that would have been a little light bulb to go off. That's kind of weird that I'm no longer having these headaches when that was pretty normal for me, at least anyway. So these are all things that we can start watching by writing things down or tracking things. So important in general.
So I think this week, in summary, Tanya and I really wanted to ensure, as we said at the beginning, that we give you some guidance from what we've experienced about how you can try and connect the dots. The first one is, for sure, we're going to say the T word again. It's tracking. You
It's
can
not
use
Tanya. The T
paper.
word should be Tanya. Sorry.
But it is tracking, whether you use a paper, whether you use an app, and there are some great apps out there. Tanya's talked about her Canadian app, which I think is great. But tracking your symptoms will really help you not just advocate for yourself, but help you to understand what's going on with your own body. I think the second thing is what we're doing, and why we're called the Talking Ovaries is trying to reduce that stigma, talking about this
Yeah.
either with your healthcare provider, with a family member, with a sister, a friend, but just talking about this, because I think then you'll find that you are much, much less alone than you think. The other thing is acceptance as well, acceptance of the fact that this isn't the end. It's not necessarily a beginning. It's just a transition. It's just moving through life
Yeah.
and doing it in the most healthy way possible. Tanya, anything else to add?
Things do get better. Like, I feel really great now, even though there was a few years of misery for sure. Hopefully, most of our friends and our daughters and people going through perimenopause don't have to experience that. That's the main goal, to help everybody navigate this with grace. And since we're talking about symptoms and tracking, our next episode is going to be focused on tracking apps from which ones are good, what you need to understand from a technical perspective, data safety, and questions that you should ask. So you don't want to miss it.
Talking Ovaries will see you next time. Bye-bye for now.
Bye.
Talking Ovaries is here for information and empowerment, but not medical advice. We recommend discussing all aspects of your health with your healthcare provider. If you'd like to be part of Talking Ovaries, hit the like and subscribe button along with the notification bell. Or you can show us some love by writing us a review and sharing this episode with the people in your life. Talking Ovaries is written, created and produced by Tanya, Lindsay and Judith Pringle. You can stay up to date with the Talking Ovaries by signing up for our newsletter and following us on Instagram, Facebook and LinkedIn. We read every review and email. This material is protected by copyright.